Bihari. Hey Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Om Agana Timirandasya Gunanjana Salakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Tapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupagada Mayam Dadati Swabhadantikam Vande Hum Sri Guru Sri Juta Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagru Jatam Sahagana Ragana Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitangscha He Krishna Koruna Sindho Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusuti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapachur Vascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudidayet Nasta Preshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Shevaya Bhagavad Yutama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki. So today, February 7th, March 7th, 2024, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 21, Instructions by Maharaj Prithu, text number 44. Gunayanam Shiladanam Kritagyam
Gunayanam Shiladanam Kritayanam
Vridashayam Sambrinite Nusampadaha
Vidashayam Sampranite Nusampadaha
Prasidatam Brahmakulam Gavamcha
Prasidatam Brahmakulam Gavancha
Janardana Sanucharaschamayam
Janardana Sanucharaschamayam
Gunayanam Shiladanam Kritagyam
Gunayanam Shiladanam Kritayanam
Vridhashayam Sambrinate nusampadaha.
Virashayam samvrinate visampara.
Prasidatam brahmakulam gavamcha.
Prasidatam brahmakulam gavamcha.
Janardana sanucharascha mayam.
Vinardana sanucharaschamayam.
Gunayanam shiladanam kritagyam.
Gunayanam shiladanam prikavyam.
Virashrayam sambrinate nusampadaha.
Virashayam samvrinate visampara.
Prasidatam brahmakulam gavamcha.
Prasidatam brahmakulam gavamcha.
Janardana sanucharascha mayam.
Vinardana sanucharaschamayam.
Please chant.
Gunayanam Shriladanam Kritagyam
Gunayanam shiladanam kritagyam.
Vidashrayam Sambrinate Sampadaha
Vidashrayam sambrinute nasampadaha.
Prasidatam Brahma Kulam Gavamcha
Vivatam brahma kulam gavamcha.
Janardana Sanucharaschamayam
Janardana sanucharaschamayam.
Gunayanam shiladanam kritagyam.
Gunayanam shiladanam kritagyam.
Vidashrayam samvrinate visampara.
Vidashrayam sambrinute nasampadaha.
Prasidatam brahmakulam gavacham.
Prasidatam brahma kulam gavamcha.
Janardana sanucharaschamayam.
Janardana sanucharaschamayam. Gunayanam shiladanam kritagyam. Vidashrayam sambrinute nasampadaha. Prasidatam brahma kulam gavamcha. Janardana sanucharaschamayam. Gunayanam shiladanam kritagyam. Vidashrayam sambrinute nasampadaha. Prasidatam brahma kulam gavamcha. Janardana sanucharaschamayam. Gunayanam shiladanam kritagyam. Vidashrayam sambrinute nasampadaha. Prasidatam brahma kulam gavamcha. Janardana sanucharaschamayam. The synonyms, please repeat. Gunayanam. One who has acquired all the good qualities. Shiladanam. One whose wealth is good behavior. Kritagyam. One who is grateful. Hridayashrayam. One who takes shelter of the learned. Sambrinante. Achieves. Anu. Certainly. Sampadaha. All opulences. Prasidatam. Be pleased upon. Brahmakulam. The Brahmana class. Gavam. The cows. Cha. And. Janardanaha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sa. With. Anucharaha. Along with his devotee. Cha. And. Mahayam. Upon me. Translation. By His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Whoever acquires the Brahminical qualifications, whose only wealth is good behavior, who is grateful, and who takes shelter of experienced persons, gets all the opulence of the world. I therefore wish that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his associates be pleased with the Brahmana class, with the cows, and with me. Please repeat. Whoever acquires the Brahminical qualifications,
Whoever acquires the Brahminical qualifications,
whose only wealth is good behavior,
whose only wealth is good behavior,
who is grateful,
who is grateful,
and who takes shelter of experienced persons,
and who takes shelter of experienced persons,
gets all the opulence of the world.
is all the opulence of the world.
I therefore wish
Therefore wish
that the Supreme Personality of Godhead
that the Supreme Personality of God
and his associates be pleased with the Brahmana class,
and his associates be pleased with the Brahmana class,
with the cows, and with me.
with the cows and the meat.
Purport. By His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipped with the prayer Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha. Thus it is clear that the Supreme Personality of Godhead respects and protects the Brahmanas and Brahminical culture, as well as the cows. In other words, wherever there are Brahmanas and Brahminical culture, there are cows and cows' protection. In a society or civilization in which there are no Brahmanas or Brahminical culture, cows are treated as ordinary animals and slaughtered at the sacrifice of human civilization. Clearly, he's talking about the world nowadays, about the culture in the West, for sure, European and American culture. The specific mention of the word Gavam by Prithu Maharaj is significant because the Lord is always associated with cows and his devotees. In pictures, Lord Krishna is always seen with cows and his associates, such as the cowherd boys and the gopis. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, cannot be alone. Therefore, Prithu Maharaj said, Shanu Charascha, indicating that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always associated with his followers and devotees. A devotee acquires all the good qualities of the demigods. He is Gunayanam, the reservoir of all good qualities. His only asset is good behavior, and he is grateful. Gratitude for the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is one of the qualities of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Everyone should feel grateful to the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he is maintaining all living entities and supplying all their necessities. As stated in the Vedas, in the Katha Upanishad 2.2.13, Eko Bahunam Yogridati Kaman. The Supreme One is supplying all necessities to the living entities. The living entity, who is therefore grateful to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is certainly qualified with good characteristics. The word Vidhashayam is very significant in this verse. Vridha refers to one who is advanced in knowledge. There are two kinds of old men, those who are advanced in years and those who are experienced in knowledge. One who is advanced in knowledge is actually Vridha, Jnana Vridha. One does not become Vridha simply by advancing in age. Vidhashayam, a person who takes shelter of a superior person who is advanced in knowledge, can acquire all the good qualities of a Brahmana and be trained in good behavior. When one actually attains good qualities, becomes grateful for the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and takes shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, he is endowed with all opulence. Such a person is a Brahmana or Vaishnava. Therefore, Prithu Maharaj invokes the blessings and mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with his associates, devotees, Vaishnavas, Brahmanas, and cows. Wow. Gunayanam Shilajanam Kritam Yam Hridashrayam Sambrinante Sampadaha Prasidatam Brahmakulam Navamcha Janardhana Shanu Charash Samayam. Whoever acquires the Brahminical qualifications, whose only wealth is good behavior, who is grateful and who takes shelter of experienced persons, gets all the opulence of the world. I therefore wish that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his associates be pleased with the Brahmana class, with the cows, and with me. That is Prithu Maharaj speaking. Mukum karoti bachalam bhangam lagete grim Jat Kripa Tamaham Vande Sri Gurum Dinatarinam. So one may think that the goal of life is to get all the opulence of the world. Reading this verse. But ordinary people think that the goal of life is to get material opulence and to enjoy. But the real opulence is to be a devotee of the Supreme Lord. And the wealth of such a person is their good qualities. So of course, this subject matter has been going on for a number of verses. And we must quote, of course, from the 5th canto, Yasyasya Bhakti Bhagavati Yakinchana Sarvarganas Tatra Samasmati Saraha Harava Bhaktasya Kato Mahadguna Manolate Nasati Dadato Bihi. That's from the 18th chapter of the 5th canto. That for one who is taken to the devotional service of Krishna, Yasyasya Bhaktir Bhagavati, Bhakti, devotional service unto Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord, Sarvarganais Tatra, all the good qualities of the demigods. Sarvarganais Tatra Samasate Sudaha. Sudaha means the demigods. All the good qualities that the demigods are naturally endowed with, they become manifest in the person who is a devotee of Krishna. So, if I'm thinking, oh yes, I'm a devotee of Krishna, but I'm not manifesting all those good qualities, then that means that, well, a devotee of Krishna is no ordinary thing. A Vaishnava is a very exalted and elevated position. So we can understand the difference between one who is a Vaishnava and one who is an aspiring Vaishnava. There's a difference. And of course, we should hope for and pray for and endeavor for the opportunity to actually become a Vaishnava. And then all the good qualities will automatically be manifest. Along the way, well, there may be some shortcomings. There will be some shortcomings there. But when you think of like, well, who is a Vaishnava? When you think of who is a Vaishnava, who do you think? Srila Prabhupada. He is a real Vaishnava with all the good qualities, amazing good qualities that we hear about in descriptions of his activities and his character and his person. Manglananda has written a song about Srila Prabhupada, describing his good qualities. And every time he plays that song, he can't finish the song, he starts crying. Because he's, of course, remembering his association with Srila Prabhupada. He actually had written a whole bunch of songs that became the Change of Heart record. And they're done in a kind of a rock pop style. And then he played some of these for Srila Prabhupada and asked him, is it okay to do this kind of a project? And Prabhupada said, yes. Prabhupada was so kind and merciful to him, seeing his propensity as a, a singer, songwriter, guitar picker kind of fellow. He encouraged him to make that record, in which there are many wonderful songs in Krishna consciousness, and it's a very beautiful record. And that record influenced me to become a devotee, especially the soprano saxophone solo on the Questions. Because I was into music and all these things, and I saw, well, here's some devotee doing that in Krishna consciousness. So that was attractive to me. I thought, how nice is that? Here's someone using their talent. I don't have the same talent as him, but he's using his talent to serve Krishna using elements of contemporary culture in a Krishna conscious way. That was very attractive to me. That encouraged me to become a devotee. Seeing how, one can utilize one can dovetail, as we like to say, one's propensities and talents in the service of Krishna. So that's a very wonderful thing. Prabhupada especially encouraged the artists, those who had artistic talent, to paint pictures for Krishna, and established a whole art department for the BBT. Thus we have so many wonderful paintings in Srila Prabhupada's books that were done by the devotees, many of whom had very little or no training, but an interest and a propensity in serving in that way, and became expert both by cultivation and practice of doing that type of artistic endeavor, but also by becoming empowered by the super soul within the heart to execute their talents for Krishna and do wonderful things. Even we see our carpenter Joe, he's not just a carpenter, he's actually a master craftsman. But he has done so many beautiful things, like those doors and that closet and the Tulsi table and so many other things at the Vyasasan for Prabhupada, Lord Nrsimha's altar. He's done all these beautiful things, and he is not a student of Bhagavad Gita per se, say the least. And all his habits are not suchi, like a brahmana. But still, he is serving Krishna and utilizing his talents for Krishna, and the results are very wonderful and inspiring to see. He just built the office for agitation there. A nice little place there. I'm surprised someone hadn't tried to move in yet. As big as some of the other, bigger than some of the other rooms we had. So Prabhupada said there was one incident at 26 Second Avenue in 1966, and Prabhupada's giving a lecture, and the newcomers, new devotees are all there, and this bum comes stumbling in the door and reeking to high heaven of alcohol and wearing all messed up clothes and messed up hair. And he comes in whistling and talking really loud and making a big disturbance. And he makes his way over to, there's a little toilet closet there. He makes his way over there, and he's wearing this, like, you know how the bums, they wear this like big overcoat even on hot days. And then he pulls out from the overcoat a roll of toilet paper and puts it in the bathroom. And then he whistles and stumbles and talks his way out the door, and all the devotees are like, this is far out. And then Prabhupada says, just see, he is not in order, but he is rendering service to Krishna. So his devotional service has begun. And the devotees were looking at each other and thinking, this is far out. Here in New York City, 1966, and this bum putting on this big show and then delivering the toilet paper. This is like, never seen anything close to this. This is really wild. This is way out. And the Swami was cool as a cucumber and appreciating the man's service. And it just blew the devotees' minds. Mukunda Maharaj describes it in his book, and it's also there in the Prabhupada Limrita. Two different descriptions. So, thus, when one begins to render service to Krishna, then his path on the of bhakti has begun. And we don't know what will happen to that person in the future, but their Krishna consciousness has begun and they will progress. In the same way for each one of us, our Krishna consciousness has begun. Somehow or other, Srila Prabhupada has created our good fortune by manifesting this worldwide society of devotees in the form of ISKCON, and given us all a chance to begin the path of bhakti, begin to perform devotional service to Krishna, and ultimately go back home, back to Godhead. But that may be some time between now and then. It's not that you go back in one day or 1 week, although you can. It's possible. It was that Maharaj Katvanga had fought on behalf of the demigods, fought the demons, and then he fought for a long time, and then they offered him a boon. You've done so well, we give you a benediction. And so his benediction was, he wanted to know when he was going to die. He said, oh yes, in just a moment, you're going to die. So he immediately took shelter of Krishna. At that moment, he dropped everything and took shelter of Krishna, knowing that his death was imminent. So you cannot imitate that. It would be nice if we would all drop all of our whole facade of material attachments and emotional perplexities and entanglement of our mind and so many desires, and just put that aside and surrender to Krishna immediately. However, the likelihood of that may be somewhat remote. But nevertheless, we can make steady progress on the path of bhakti by following the principles of Krishna consciousness and keeping association of devotees. And we have to mention, of course, the importance of cows as given in this verse. Prabhupada says, wherever there are brahmanas and Brahminical culture, then there are cows and cow protection. And Lord Krishna demonstrated this personally in his pastimes. He performed his pastimes in the cowherd village of Vrindavan in a rural setting, and grew up as a cowherd boy, tending the cows and playing with his friends, the cowherd boys, and having his pastimes with the cowherd girls, the village girls, the gopis. So that is a good indication of what is real civilized culture. And Prabhupada draws the contradistinction that where there is no Brahminical culture and no cultivation of Krishna consciousness, then cows are just treated as livestock, fodder for slaughter. I know I spent a good part of my youth in a place that was called Cowtown, Fort Worth, Texas, Cowtown. And there, back in the 19th century, they would have there were all these cows in Texas, and they would drive these cows to market wherever there was a railroad. And then they would ship them off to different places for slaughter. And that was the whole culture. And from that grew the whole cowboy movie entertainment industry, which was big in the 1940s and 50s and 60s into the 70s. But the whole premise or basis of that culture is so barbaric and about as far from Krishna consciousness as you could get. Unfortunately. And so Prabhupada says the cows are slaughtered at the sacrifice of human civilization, meaning at the sacrifice of all the good qualities that human civilization, human society should manifest, ideally. But practically speaking, we don't see all over the world, and the cows are slaughtered mercilessly, and people just eat the flesh as if it were just an ordinary activity. But it actually is a greatly sinful activity. So for ordinary people, oh, it is very nice. Go to McDonald's or Burger King or wherever. But it is the most sinful activity, the slaughtering of the animals and eating the flesh. And therefore, that is proscribed in Krishna consciousness. No meat eating, no animal slaughter. How horrible is that? Just do not associate with that sinful activity. And then you become relieved, become free from that entanglement, which is a very positive thing that every devotee has embraced in their life. And we think, when we think of all the organized slaughterhouses, and on the north side of Fort Worth was a big slaughterhouse there, and it stunk to high heaven, and you could smell it for miles and miles and miles. 10 miles away, you could smell that slaughterhouse. Also, when I was a little bit younger, we had lived in Omaha, Nebraska, which was famous for its stockyards there on the frontiers of what used to be the old Wild West. And there was a bridge. I remember when I was a little kid, you drive over this bridge and there's all these railroad tracks and the slaughterhouse there. And it smells really bad. And it looks really horrible. All industrial, metal, rusty, grungy. All the bad qualities you can imagine are manifest in such a place. And I have personal experience of this. So at the time, I didn't realize it. But looking back on it, boy, I should realize it now, having given up that horrible, sinful, demoniac culture. What a stain it is upon the surface of Mother Earth. How can she bear that? So, therefore, human society requires a civilization of protection of especially the cows. And that will help elevate human society. But otherwise, human society, because of this wanton slaughtering and killing and tasting of blood and such things, it becomes very degraded and filled with all the bad qualities that make life hellish for everyone. So, Prabhupada says, in pictures, Lord Krishna is always seen with the cows. His arm around the cow. There's all these cows. There's like, 900,000 cows, Maharaj Nanda. And they all have different names. Krishna knows all their names. And they're all decorated with gold-plated hooves and silver-plated horns and ornaments. And, modern society could hardly imagine, like, what the heck? Putting gold on the cows? I mean, you got to be kidding me. And those are meant for, killing and eating to satisfy the tongue. And our air conditioner repair guy, Rohit, he's from a Hindu family. And so after we had acquired our beautiful white turkey, Sufi, Rohit came here to work on one of the units on top of the old Brahmachari ashram building there, which is now Kumudwan's residence. The heater wasn't working, it was getting cold, so he came to fix that. And he brought his associate, his assistant with him. And the assistant was carrying on about the turkey. He said, oh, he looks good to me, I'd like to eat him. He was saying all these things. And I'm looking at Rohit, and Rohit's looking at me like, sorry, man. And then the same thing happened. I sent a picture of that turkey to my older brother, and he said, that looks good. Oh. Immediately the demonic mentality is that, yes, I want to kill and enjoy. And Prabhupada says that is out of envy. One is envious of the animals and wants to kill them and eat them out of envy. So that is in contradistinction and the antithesis of spiritual culture. Of course, we know this quite well. We see the turkey and we think, he's a living entity and he's taking prasad. Especially has he learned from Prana, our golden pheasant, that the lettuce is very desirable. He didn't know it at first. He was kind of into bananas, but then he saw Prana eating the lettuce, so he thought now he's really into the lettuce, which is from our salad bar, which is prasadam that's been offered to Krishna and is left over and thrown away. Instead of being thrown away, just give the prasadam to the animals, and they like it very much. You see, I saw yesterday Ram Gopal was there giving the prasad, and then the turkey was right there going for the lettuce. He had learned, yes, this is very desirable. They don't have teeth, so they just swallow everything whole. There's an expression, as rare as hen's teeth, so as rare as turkey teeth, or golden pheasant teeth, or peacock teeth. So that is the way animals should be treated and protected, like one's own family members. It's stated in the Shastra. Should be taken care of, one's household animals and domestic animals in a farm, rural setting. So that is the glories of our birds. So the main asset of a devotee that he develops is his good behavior and his gratitude to Krishna. So Prabhupada says very nicely here, everyone should feel grateful to the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he is supplying you the necessities of life and maintaining you. Even in one place, Prabhupada writes that you may choose this occupation and you may choose that occupation, but it's actually Krishna who is maintaining you, even though you've chose to work in a certain field or have a certain type of career or whatever, which most of us don't have. Our only career is serving Krishna, and he's maintaining us. Who's eating better than the devotees here? No one. No one is eating on it, except for the customers who come here. Krishna's maintaining everyone, and the devotees have made their choice to serve Krishna to the best of their ability, and they may have to do this or do that to make a little money sometimes. But actually, you can choose some occupation, but it is Krishna who's actually maintaining you. That is the real thing. Krishna is maintaining all the living entities. Nityo, Nityanam, Chaitanas, Chaitananam. And then Prabhupada quotes here the last part of that verse from the Katha Upanishad, which is a very important Upanishad. Prabhupada quotes many key verses from that Upanishad. Eko bahunam, yovididati kaman. Eko bahunam, there's the one, Eko bahunam, in the many, the one is maintaining the many. Yovididati kaman. So everything that you want, everything that you need, it's all coming by the mercy of God. Even you may not realize it. You think, yes, I am working, and by my work I am getting good results, and everything is coming. But actually, it's coming from Krishna. Eko bahunam yovididati kaman. This is the real philosophical understanding of our position in this world as living entities. We're being maintained by the Supreme. He's making all these fantastic, amazing, intricately detailed arrangements so that we can be maintained. And then, so why should those who are surrendered to God not be maintained as well? He's maintaining all the rascals and the non-devotees and the thieves and the crooks. Prabhupada says in one place, he points out how it's a very difficult position for God. The householder's praying, my dear Lord, please protect my house and all my possessions. And then the thief is praying, my dear Lord, please let me break into that house and steal that householder's possessions, and then I can sell it at the pawn shop or to the fence or whatever, and then I get money. And that way I will have my house and my possessions. So they're both praying to God, you protect my stuff, you let me steal that stuff. But God is in a very difficult position because he's fulfilling everyone's desires and he's maintaining everyone. So it's quite intricate. and complex what goes on in the world. And people are bewildered by that intricacy and complexity of the material nature, and they can't understand it. Even great philosophers and learned persons, they can't see through all of it. Even Bhishma Dev mentions this in the Bhagavatam, where he's, in the first canto, he's laying on the bed of arrows. But he has not given up his body yet. He's waiting for the proper time. And then the Pandavas, Maharaj Yudhisthira and the Pandavas, they come to inquire from grandfather Bhishma. And it's written therein that Bhishma Dev was this greatly learned and experienced person. He was the grandfather of the entire Kuru dynasty. And he was very expert in knowledge and religion. And he is what's referred to in this verse as Vridha. This verse mentions Vridashayam. So Vridha literally means old. And Prabhupada explains it right here. The word Vridashayam is very significant in this verse. Vridha refers to one who is advanced in knowledge. There are two kinds of old men. Then he mentions old men, which is actually the meaning of Vridha, means old. Vridha, an old person. But generally, an old person should be experienced and have knowledge. Ideally, they should not just be a fool. And certainly, Bhishma Dev, he is not a fool, but he is the most wisest, the most experienced, has dealt with, I mean, you look at the whole history of the Mahabharata, he's dealt with all the political machinations and situations of the dynasty and the war, the Kurukshetra war, and he was a great devotee of Krishna. He was on the other side from Krishna. He was on the side of Dhirodatta and his family fighting against the Pandavas, who he knew were Krishna's great devotees. But he was obliged because he was being maintained by them as the elder statesman. But his experience and learning and knowledge and culture of devotion was extremely vast. So much so that Krishna came to see him at the time of his passing. And that was the perfection. He wanted to look at Krishna as he passed away. Kind of reminds, in our Sampradaya, we are reminded of Haridas Thakur, who was kind of, he'd become old and he was feeling despondent, and Lord Chaitanya came to see him and said, what's wrong, Haridas? You don't seem your usual self. And they were talking back and forth, and then Haridas says, well, my real disease is I cannot complete my rounds. And he was chanting 192 rounds a day, which he had been doing throughout his life since he was a young man. 3 lakhs. And then he was advised, well, you know, you're getting old now. You can decrease your japa vrata because of physically it's difficult. And then he said to Lord Chaitanya, kindly hear my real plea, my Lord. He said, I know that at some point in the not too distant future, you're going to wind up your pastimes here on earth. And I do not wish to see the closing chapter of your pastimes. Therefore, my Lord, please give me permission to leave this body while looking at your lotus face and placing your lotus feet on my head, looking at your moon-like lotus face, he said. And then that will be perfection for me, because otherwise it will be too painful if you precede me leaving this world and I have to witness your passing and your separation like that. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu understood his plea, and then they arranged a festival for Haridas Thakur, and then he did grab Lord Chaitanya's lotus feet and place them on his head, and then out of his own will, he gave up his body, not from a, some kind of aneurysm or a, busted blood vessel in his head or a heart attack or, cancer or something like that. But simply by his own will, through the power of his mystic yoga and bhakti, he was able to do that. Just like Grandfather Bhishma, who was able to give up his body and at a time of his own choosing. And he stayed there on the bed of arrows. His body was filled with arrows stuck into the ground. And he stayed there in that condition, undisturbed. Imagine being undisturbed with your body being filled with arrows, It's not possible. But he was undisturbed and just waiting for the proper time, and he wanted to take Krishna's darshan at that moment and then give up his body, which he did. And Haridas Thakur did that with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Grandfather Bhishma is a great example of one who's vriddha. He was old, but he wasn't just some crazy old guy. No, he was very advanced and elevated in knowledge. Prabhupada says, there are two kinds of old men. Those who are advanced in years and those who are experienced in knowledge. One who is advanced in knowledge is actually vriddha, jnana vriddha. One does not become vriddha simply by advancing in age. There are so many people, they just get old. Does that make them qualified in some way just because they're old? Well, not if they're a fool. You don't take shelter of a fool. They got a crazy old guy that lives shares the driveway with me, and he's younger than me, but he looks like he's about 100 years old. And he's all bent over, and he's always coming home with like a 12-pack of beer, and his house is all littered. You can see he doesn't have curtains on the windows. They're just filled with, drink cups from Quick Trip and beer cans, and it's just incredibly sad and pitiful. So he's vriddha, he's old. Does that mean he's worth taking shelter of? No, he has no knowledge. He's very foolish. And he's just whiling away his time till death and trying to satisfy his senses, drinking the beer, like that. It's very sad to see that. Actually, I talked to a sister one day. She was taking him to a medical appointment, and she said, they can't figure out what's wrong with him. No one can, they can't understand, but he's in a very bad condition. So one who takes shelter of a superior person who is advanced in knowledge, Prabhupada says what? Can acquire the good qualities of a Brahmana and be trained in good behavior. Training, what is that? You can't tell me anything. Yes, but one needs to be trained up in Krishna consciousness. And then one develops the good qualities, which, let's see, I wrote down all these notes and then I didn't bring my glasses, but I remember most of them. I want to refer back to a verse in purport in chapter 20 of the fourth canto. This is something that we covered recently, but I thought it was worth going back to and hearing again. From chapter 20, the previous chapter, Lord Vishnu's appearance in the sacrificial arena of Maharaj Prithu. And this is text 21, and here it is. No, sorry. And the verse, oh, that's not the right verse. It's not 21, I think it's 20. Okay, I'll find it here in a second. No, that's not it. Let's see, which one is it? I think it's 16. I didn't memorize the verse number. Give me a second here. I'll call it up. I can't go in the book because I can't see the book.
Look at the notes for you.
No, I got it. You might not be able to read my writing anyway. Okay. The translation of the verse is that this is the Lord speaking to Maharaj Prithu. My dear king, I'm very captivated by your elevated qualities and excellent behavior, and thus I am very favorably inclined toward you. You may therefore ask for me any benediction you like. One who does not possess elevated qualities and behavior cannot possibly achieve my favor, simply by performance of sacrifices, severe austerities, or mystic yoga. But I remain equipoised in the heart of one who is also equipoised in all circumstances. Sounds very Bhagavad Gita-like, where Krishna speaks many times about one who is equipoised and indifferent to material transformations. And then he talks about the qualities, and he lists the 26 qualities of the devotees, which I will read here. Number 1, kind to everyone. Oh, that's me, huh? 2, does not quarrel with anyone. 3, fixed in the absolute truth. 4, equal to everyone. 5, faultless. 6, charitable. 7, mild. 8, clean. 9, simple. 10, benevolent. 11, peaceful. 12, completely attached to Krishna. 13, has no material hankering. 14, meek. 15, steady. 16, self-controlled. 17, which in Sanskrit is called mitabuk, does not eat more than required. 18, this is one of my favorite ones. 18, sane. As opposed to insane. That's a good one. 19, respectful. 20, humble. 21, grave. Another one of my favorite qualities. Grave, does that mean one's partly underground and buried by dirt? No. A grave means one is self-situated and not subject to emotional gyrations. One is always fixed on Krishna and serious. About one devotee who was a leader in our movement many, many years ago, it said, this is very funny, devotee told me about this person. He said he never smiled. And Prabhupada gave him heaps of responsibility. He was a grave. 22, compassionate. 23, friendly. 24, poetic. 25, expert. Another one of my favorite ones. Expert. But we should try to become expert in serving Krishna. Like an expert pujari, expert cook, expert kirtanir. What we really need is someone who's an expert maintenance man. That kind of expertise. As you all may know, that Siddhamani thinks that I'm the maintenance man, but I am not expert in that field. She keeps trying to get me to do all these things that are beyond my skill level. 26, silent. Silent, does that mean they never say anything? What kind of Bhagavatam class would we have if the speaker is silent? But silent means no talking nonsense, only talking about Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada goes on to say, the Lord is satisfied by the development of the transcendental qualities of the living entity, and not by artificial performance of sacrifices and mystic yoga. Okay, so we'll stop there. Questions, comments, realizations? Yes, Chandrika.
I know when I was a child, and a lot of other people too, when they were a child, we used to go to, my mom would go to the butchers, and we'd see the animals that were slaughtered. And I know inside me innately, I felt like, oh my gosh, because you're not really relating it to what you're eating, but in those days you could see what it was. Whereas, so, for me, when I was introduced to vegetarianism, right away I related and I said, okay, I get it. I don't want to eat it anymore. And I remembered, that time period. Whereas nowadays, everything is so packaged, apart from some, specialized cultures that glorify things like that. But with all the packaging nowadays, a lot of people don't, they don't have that realization of what they're eating. So do you think people are more in illusion now than before to understand, Krishna consciousness and vegetarianism because of that?
Yes, in the past, in the present, and in the future, the living entities are under the control of Maya and our illusions in various ways. And because of the current civilization of godlessness and the influence of that ignorance, then that is all over the world. And it's a lamentable condition. And no wonder there are like wars and so many strife and struggling and things, because people have taken shelter of the demoniac principles and forgetting Krishna. And they're illusioned by the material energy. So people were in illusion in the past, yes. People are in illusion at the present, yes, no doubt. And in the future, even worse, as Kali Yuga progresses. Then we'll become more barbaric and devoid of good qualities as this age progresses. So don't wait to become fully Krishna conscious and go back to Godhead. You don't want to take birth in the Kali Yuga 1,000 years later, or 5,000 years later, or 10,000 years later. I don't think so. Better take care of business now. And, someone thinks, oh yes, I'll become Krishna conscious later. Just now let me enjoy it. Then later I'll be Krishna conscious. Doesn't work out like that. You have to start now and put your best effort into it. And try to help others understand these things, distribute this knowledge for others. All right? That it? Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
The last 3 classes you've given have been like